Good evening. It's Monday, April the 15th, and this is the April edition of the Planning Commission meeting. The first order of business is we'll do roll call. Kelly?
Matt Reynolds.
Here.
Ashley Paddock. Here. John Lassley.
Here.
Kevin Krulik.
Here.
Keith Campbell.
Here.
Gordon Perry, absent. Brian Tandy.
Here.
Jane Taylor.
Here.
And Lori Gross.
Here.
Okay, I don't see any old business. Move on to new business. We have docket 19-6.
Approve the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll go back up. We need to approve the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to read through them?
We did.
Okay. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Carries. Okay, now we'll move on to new business. Docket 19-6, David Jones representing Key Car Wash, requesting a development plan for a tunnel car wash. Ben, you want to walk us through that?
Absolutely. Good evening, Planning Commission members. I'll walk you through some of the high points of the project and the site design, and then we'll let the applicant kind of walk through some of the specifics of the operation for you. Just to try to give you a little bit of background here, if they would pull up the screen, I can kind of walk you through. So this far north, this is actually going to be combining a couple of different parcels. To the far north, there was a home that was here has already been torn down, and then you have the doctor's office that has not been torn down, that is proposed to be torn down as part of this. There were two drive cuts on to State Road 39, and you see they're kind of combining this to one larger parcel than what was there previously to accommodate this development. The property is currently zoned planned business commercial, and it's in the thoroughfare overlay district. There was some discussion last week at the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting about whether this was an appropriate use for this property. It is a permitted use within the planned business commercial district, so this isn't necessarily a discussion on whether it's an appropriate use. We're going to be focusing tonight on whether this is the appropriate site design for this property. I did look at a little bit of the history of the property. The oldest zoning map we still have in the planning office is from 1974, about 45 years ago. This property's been zoned commercially for at least 45 years. So this type of use has been permitted for at least that period of time and probably longer. Just to walk through a little bit of the approval history, this was, as I mentioned, up in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals last week, and they had a number of variances that were needed to be requested. Most of them, not quite all of them, but most of them were related to the fact this was an existing lot that's smaller than the planned business commercial minimum lot size. So one of the variances was related to lot size. The rest of them were related to the fact that there's constraints to this lot because of its size, primarily the depth. You have both the buffer yard that's required along the street as well as along the rear of the property adjacent to the residential homes are just challenging to meet because of the depth. So you just had a number of variances were required because of the lot size. A couple other things, building materials. I'll pull up the rendering for you here. This is the concept that the applicant is bringing. I think he discovered this concept out in Colorado when he wanted to bring here. So while it's I feel like a fairly attractive architectural design to the building, I'm certainly up for debate whether the opinions are shared with mine, but it does not technically meet our material requirement in the overlay of 50% masonry. As you can see, it does have masonry in various components, but it's got a variety of building materials, and primarily this is a glass and or polycarbonate building. So what you see here is a roof. It's actually a clear polycarbonate roof, so you can actually see the inner workings of the car wash. So the primary material is the polycarbonate and glass. Let's pull the site plan back up, and we'll kind of walk through kind of the overall site design. So we'll have some questions about how they're managing traffic and ingress and egress to the site. But this is the overall site. The entrance to the car wash is on the south side of the building. So the cars will enter either from this entrance on Lebanon Street, which is the entrance location that NDOT liked. And the reason they chose for it to be offset to Sunnybrook Lane is it would allow at least a couple of cars to be waiting in the queue to turn left here, and people from Sunnybrook can still turn left and get out behind them if there's space for them to do so. So it does allow for a little bit of queuing on to Lebanon Street turning in before you would actually block people getting out of Sunnybrook. So they actually prefer that offset this way. We actually originally suggested to the applicant that he line them up, and then NDOT changed that, so they put it exactly where the state wanted it. So traffic primarily, this is their primary entrance. They do have a secondary entrance, so I'll show you here in a second. But primarily they'll be entering from Lebanon Street They cross around to the back side of the building, and then you can see there they have 2 queuing lanes where we'll go to pay stations. And I think we ran some quick calculations. What you see here is 12 cars in the queue already, which more than already meets our queuing requirements. But before you actually get out to the entrance, you can probably put 20 to 30 cars in 2 lines before you get anywhere close to getting out to Lebanon Street. So something, I know there was a question, is what happens when traffic backs up on Lebanon Street? Well, first of all, the applicant would probably be excited because there's a lot of people buying car washes, but it would take a lot of people before you get into that situation. Then they enter the car wash from the south side of the building and exit from the north side. To leave the site, you either have the opportunity to have either a right or left turn dedicated lane here on the main entrance, or if and or when that does start backing up, you see here that they have this access area across the front of the property, and then also they're going to record an access easement that allows you to get out to a secondary access out on Northfield Drive, which will also allow you to get to a signalized intersection out here. So as I said, if and or when, probably more likely when Lebanon Street is busy, and this gets backed up at all with people trying to get out of the site, then you have that secondary entrance that people will duck down to that gets them to the signalized intersection. Let me pull the rest of my staff report out here, make sure I'm not missing anything. In terms of other designs for the site, they do have 6 parking spaces. It looks like they have a lot more, but those are primarily the free vacuum cleaner spaces. So in terms of the actual employee parking spaces, they have 2 of them that are situated down here next to their enclosed trash area. Then you have 1 that sits here, and then you have 2 that are here. And another component of this that I didn't mention yet is they actually do have self-serve pet wash stations. So they've provided 2 parking spaces for those pet wash stations that you see located right here on this side of the building. And then the 6th one is located up here on the north end of the lot. So as I mentioned, the rest of these here across this north and then across the front of the building, whoops, are the vacuum stations that are fairly typical that you see on a tunnel car wash like this. This is a tunnel car wash only. There are no self-serve stations here, so it's just the tunnel car wash, and then you have the 2 self-serve pet wash stations that are here. All right, move on to the next element here. In terms of the lighting, there was a variance that was approved last week for light intensity. So what they've done here is you've essentially got a shared parking lot with the building to the south. There isn't a parking lot perimeter landscape area or something that divides these 2. They have a shared parking area, they got a shared access easement. So what they did when they designed their lighting, because this is an area where if somebody's going to bail out or come back to rewash if it doesn't get clean, this area may see some traffic, certainly with people also ducking down. So once it gets dark, they wanted to make sure this area was appropriately lit. So adjacent, on any property line where they're adjacent to certainly the residential uses to the west or to the north or to the east, they have met all our light intensity standards. They're at below 0.3 on the residential and below 0.5 anywhere else. On that south property line, they've kept the lighting intensity a little bit higher because as a shared parking area, you wouldn't even know that these were 2 separate uses necessarily because of shared parking. So what they've done is keeping the lighting intensity a little bit higher on that south property line to make sure that this access area is appropriately lit. Otherwise, they've met all of our lighting standards requirements other than what was approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals last week. In terms of landscaping, let me pull that up here. It shows up on your screen better than mine, so that's good. So as you can see, they've provided significant landscaping both on the north property line and east property line. Right now, the parking lot along Lebanon Street goes all the way to the property line. There is no area for landscaping right now that wouldn't be in the right-of-way. So they've actually pulled the parking area back 10 feet to provide at least some setback from Lebanon Street, which provided them the area to provide this landscaping you see along here that doesn't exist today. So they've provided all that, and then you all be happy to know that they will be installing a sidewalk along this entire property frontage and continuing south all the way to Northfield Drive. So we'll have a sidewalk all the way along this side of Lebanon Street all the way up to the north property line of this project. The applicant is actively marketing this lot to the north as well. It is not currently part of this application, so they hadn't continued the sidewalk then. It's the anticipation that when this site develops, that they would extend the sidewalk across all the way north to the Estes property line. So we will be getting sidewalks all the way along here. It's just that this sidewalk on this north part will happen when that site develops. You can see they've also provided landscaping around the portions of the building where they actually have the ability to provide landscaping. They did receive some variances for building-based landscaping because they couldn't provide the entire 75% of the perimeter. And then also a slight variation on our requirements for interior parking lot landscaping. We require 1 tree per every certain square feet. They would have been happy to do that, other than they were concerned about in the fall when leaves hit the ground and then getting drug into the car wash and causing maintenance issues with all their drains getting clogged up. So what they did is they worked with their landscape architect to provide an appropriate alternative that would provide essentially it meets the intent, but not necessarily the rule, but they have provided significant interior parking lot landscaping. The other location that we did spend a lot of time looking at was this western property line where it's adjacent to the existing residential homes. They did not have the space to provide the full buffer, but what they have done is provide a combination of an 8-foot tall privacy fence that runs essentially along the property line. And then they've also added a fairly significant landscape screening to the interior of the fence. So these residents will have a larger screen than they do now. Again, the parking area goes up primarily, essentially to the property line now. So they have pulled that back to provide an area for that fence and landscaping. So there's a better screen than there is now, and significantly taller than what's there now. In terms of signage, you'll note that in my staff report that we're still working on the signage a little bit. I think I got that opened up. I might accidentally close it. Let's pull it up again. There we go. So in terms of signage, they got 2 elements that they have: the building wall sign that you see represented here on the right half of this plan. This meets all applicable standards for signage. What you see on the right was their initial proposal for a sign. This does not meet our standards. We don't allow pylon signs like this, except for within certain distances of the interstate. So we're working on them with an alternative. They're still working on exactly this design, but it will end up being a ground sign that meets the standards of size. And then they're working right now to figure out exactly how they incorporate that digital sign. And they will be coming back to us with the appropriate sign package that meets all the applicable requirements. If for some reason that they're not able or want to vary from those requirements, they will have to go back to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And so we made a condition in there that they provide a signage plan that meets all applicable requirements of the UDO for wall and ground signs. So again, we're still working through exactly how that ground sign works, but they are aware of all the requirements that they would need to meet. In terms of architecture, I pulled it up. You're able to see that. One thing I'll let the applicant go through is how the operations of the building and some of the interesting things he's able to do with this concept, but you can kind of see the design here of that building. This would represent the front that would face Lebanon Street that you see right here. So in terms of recommendation, this does meet all of the UDO standards that are applicable to the site, other than those that were approved, the variances that were approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. And we do recommend approval of the development plan contingent on the following conditions. First, that they receive final stormwater drainage approval, formal drainage approval for the City of Lebanon. Second, that they adequately address any remaining City of Lebanon TAC comments prior to any application for any permits. And then the third is the signage plan, that they provide a signage plan that meets all applicable requirements for wall and ground signs. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the commission?
The only question I have, Ben, is what about the heating and air? Where are they going to be located at to service things?
The heating and air?
Like the air conditioner or the heater?
Oh, any utility? Okay.
Okay, so they're not visible though? You got no elevation on it? Okay, thank you.
What kind of fence are they using, Ben? Do you know?
It's a tan vinyl fence, 8 feet tall.
Who's going to take care of the backside? I know we have that issue a lot.
Anything that's part of the applicant's property, he will maintain. Let me see if I have it here. This question did come up for the BZA. Which one do I want here? So this shows a little bit. So his fence will be somewhat off the property line, maybe a foot or two, so there is an area that he will have to maintain behind the fence, and as the applicant, I'm sure will be able to tell you himself, he maintains that area now, so he intends to continue maintaining it. As you can see here, some of the fences on the residential properties are actually offset as well. Anything that's part of their property, they will be required to maintain themselves. So whatever's on his property, he will be maintaining.
And you touched on it, the access point on State Road 39, having it offset from Sunnyset Lane.
Yeah.
What was NDOT's involvement in this? Was there a study done, a survey? Can you tell us a little bit about how that decision was made?
Sure, and Kevin was actually attending the meeting, so if there's some specific questions about the discussion, he'd be able to answer those as well. There was, when the applicant had a conceptual plan, they did schedule a meeting with the local NDOT office to look at the drive cut locations, whether they had any concerns about traffic issues or queuing or anything like that. So that's where they made the decision. Like I said, we had suggested that they line it up with Sunnybrook Lane, and NDOT preferred it to be slightly offset to allow some queuing on Lebanon Street before it blocks Sunnybrook Lane. And then NDOT, Kevin can fill in the details, they had no concerns about the levels of traffic. And again, I understand Lebanon Street is busy. It's all a discussion of level of service when NDOT's looking at it. So until it gets to level of service D, which for us may seem like you're waiting a long time, a level service D, but until it gets to that point, NDOT's not even looking at anything. So I don't know what level of service Lebanon Street operates at now, but as they looked at it and the addition of traffic here, they decided while yes, it does add traffic, we can all admit that it is going to add traffic. It wasn't to the point where something needs to be done. And of course, the challenge here is you've got a signalized intersection right close here, so it's not like they're going to add another light here. So you're somewhat limited to what you really can do here with there already being a left turn lane here. But I don't know if there's anything else that I'm missing.
I would just add, when it was a functioning doctor's office, when it was Dr. Honen's office, a doctor's office of that nature, the traffic generated by a doctor's office is not much different than you might see with a car wash. Might be hard to believe, but an average doctor's office might produce, 150 to 200 cars coming in and out of there every day. When you think about appointments, deliveries, drop-offs, all the necessary things that happen with an eye doctor's office or any medical office for that matter. So. A car wash is not drastically different from a doctor's office from that perspective in terms of what traffic it generates. And in fact, some would argue on rainy days it doesn't generate any traffic. Neither do a lot of days during the winter, where if you look at the aggregate of traffic generated by a doctor's office, that's pretty much 365 days a year. So, NDOT looks at that. Do they take into account that it's a closed doctor's office? No. They look at what the use was today, what it's going to become. And I think when you're comparing the uses from that standpoint, there's not a drastic difference.
And I'm comforted at the easement access to Northfield Drive. I think that makes a huge difference to be able to get to that lighted intersection, to be able to make that left-hand turn. So that was my only concern, was the in and out on 39, but with the access to Northfield, we shouldn't have issues.
There's no doubt at times this area is going to get busy. A nice Saturday morning, anytime you go past Tunnel Car Wash, it's busy. So it is going to be busy on this site, but we feel like we've been able to provide the best solution here to be able to get people in and out of the site as effectively as possible.
What type of material, Ben, are they using for the beds, as far as the flower beds? Is going to be mulch or rock? I thought I read somewhere where it's going to be rock.
I guess the applicant's saying it's rock, so.
Okay.
I don't know that I knew the answer to that question until he said it, so I guess.
Anything else from the commission? I'd like to hear from the applicant.
Good evening. My name's David Jones. I usually don't know what to say at these things, so I'll just start off with my history. I'm a lifelong resident of Lebanon and went to school here, graduated in 1973, and then went to Purdue University and graduated there. In 1983, my wife and I started a business in Dr. Honen's office writing software for eye doctors. We grew that business and expanded into all the 3 farmhouses that you saw north of Dr. Honen's and between Jagger Harris and his office. And at our high point, we had over 50 employees. So we established that business, that we can run a business. We had a company approach us in 1999, December. We sold that business and thought we were going to retire. We didn't. We stayed another 2 years. We were stupid and we started another business, the same business that we had sold. So I had a non-compete. I couldn't get back into the business in 2005. My wife's non-compete was not as strict. She started the business in 2002. I worked for my brother from 2002 to 2005. And then my wife said, I need you back here. So I moved back and we started building the business a second time. So we built the business, and again, we established ourselves as a nationally recognized business. And in 2016, we had another company approach us and they wanted to buy us. So in November 2016, we sold our business again. So now we're supposed to be retired, but we aren't actually retired at this point in time. I should make a point of this, is that when my wife and I started our first business, we had a goal that we never thought we would achieve. That goal was to be the preeminent ophthalmology software company in the country. In 1998 and 1999, we were the #1 software company in the country, which kind of floored us because we didn't know we could achieve that. But anyway, that's here and there. But we have been in business a couple times. We know business. Why I want to get into a car wash business, I needed something to do to keep me busy, so it sounded like a good idea. It's a good investment, I think. I think Lebanon could support it. It's a very good location. It has the highest traffic count in Lebanon, and I think I'd like to make a success of it, and I think Lebanon would like it. If you have any questions of me, I'd be glad to answer them.
You just want to tell us about the daily operation of that, maybe the hours of operation?
The hours will probably be flexible based upon our experience and how to run it. I mean, this is something new to me. I've got some people in Ohio that I've been talking to. They're going to give me some advice if I need it. I'm assuming the hours will be 7 to 8 or 7 to 9. It depends on the daylight hours, depends on the traffic counts, that sort of thing. So it won't be a 24/7, but it'll be 7 to 8, 7 to 9, or 8 to 8, something like that.
Okay.
Staff-wise, we'll probably have three probably full-time and probably 2 or 3 or 4 part-time people. Again, this is going to be a learning experience in some parts of it.
Any questions from the commission to the applicant?
Yeah, I've got one. The outdoor vacuums that are going to be there, is that something that's going to be running 24/7, or is that
Well,
something
yeah.
that, I mean, in the sense, can someone come and do it 24/7?
No, it'll be just open just there when the car wash is open.
Okay.
And they will be free. They will not be charged.
Right,
They won't be
okay.
charged for those.
I just more curious, at 2 o'clock in the morning, somebody go in there and decide they want to clean their car and wake everybody up and.
The pet washes,
You do it.
there's another company I copied this from out in Colorado. They have pet washes too, and they keep theirs open 24/7. I'm only going to keep mine open while people are there.
Right. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, David, I certainly think that you're filling a need here in the community. I'm not familiar with Key. Is that something that you guys came up with? Is this kind of something that you say it's modeled after something in Colorado? Is it
There's a building just like this in Colorado. When I saw it, I loved it. I thought it was a good, modern-looking building. It was clean, gave very good road presentation. And I just, I haven't made a lot of changes to it. I just liked the way it was. The length of the building is the same. I'm using a little different equipment on the inside. We will be using a belt system. If you're not familiar with the belt system, if you've been up to Anson's Car Wash, they use a belt system. Most of the car washes that Crew uses, they call those chain systems, where they pull the one wheel. The belt system, you drive on the belt, and the belt just takes you on through the car wash.
Okay.
What's the comparison between what you're doing and Crew, just as far as?
There's really not a lot of comparisons. They probably will have more people on their site than I will. They have a greeter greeter out front, and so I'll have stations where you pay your money and you go on through. From a from an equipment standpoint and a wash standpoint, it's very similar. Usually, this is something that, I've learned is that usually the shorter the car wash, the longer it takes to put a car through it because it has to run slower. The longer the car wash is, the faster a car will go through. This length of car wash will probably handle around 110, 120 cars an hour at full capacity.
Are you going to have a monthly, similar to what Crew has?
Just like everybody else, yes.
You pay one month, you get unlimited?
Yep.
Perfect. I'll take my stickers off of Crew.
Anybody else? No, I'd speak for everybody. I think we're excited. Matt said it fills a need. I'll echo that. So, thank you.
Thanks, David.
At this time, we'll open this to a public hearing. Anybody from the public would like to come and speak? Not seeing any movement, so we will close the public hearing. Is there any other comments from the commission? Take them now. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve this development plan or not approve it.
I'll make a motion to approve docket 19-6. The development plan is presented to the Plan Commission with the following conditions: stormwater approval. The applicant receives formal drainage approvals from the City of Lebanon Board of Public Works prior to application for any building permits or site improvements. TAC comments. The applicant adequately addresses any remaining City of Lebanon TAC comments prior to application for any building permits or site improvements. Signage plan. The applicant provides a signage plan that meets all applicable requirements of the UDO for wall and ground signs.
I'll second.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Congratulations. All right, next order of business is docket 19-9, and it's a consideration for initial zoning classification for a voluntary annexation consisting of approximately 45 acres. Looks like on some ground off 300 North. Ben, want to tell us about that?
Very good. We'll walk this pretty quick. We've done a couple of these over the last year and a half. This one's just a tad unique because we're in 2019, the year before a census. This annexation won't be able to take effect until next year. But we're going to work its way through its process and go ahead and get the annexation adopted just with an effective date of January 1, 2020. Other than that, it's just like every other one we've done. We've received a petition for annexation, so this is 100% voluntary annexation. With any annexation, the Plan Commission is required to provide a recommendation of the zoning district to the council to be part of their annexation ordinance. In this case, there is not a proposal for this property, which the UDO would suggest in that case that we establish the zoning district SF, single family, on the property. And that's what we've done in this case. This property, in terms of the comprehensive plan, is kind of a mix of residential land use classification, so that SF zoning classification is appropriate. If at some point someone decides to develop this property, they can come in and request a change of zoning or PUD or anything like that. But for the time being, once it's annexed, the recommendation is the single-family SF zoning classification. So with that, staff is recommending that the Plan Commission make a recommendation to the council of the SF single-family zoning classification. Any questions?
I believe we did this earlier to the small parcel attached to this.
Yeah, this is kind of this is going to be a three-step annexation. They did annex this small little 6-acre piece down here to the southeast. That annexation is now effective, so they're looking to do the second annexation to bring the second piece in. Once this becomes effective next year, my understanding is they're going to bring in a couple of properties here to kind of square this off here. I don't know that there's any proposals, but I do know that at least portions of this property are being actively marketed, so they felt like it was a benefit to them to be in the city as part of their marketing for the property. So that's my expectations, is in 2020 we'll see a third step of this annexation come in.
And you indicated this won't become effective until January 1.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible for us to see site development come before the Plan Commission before that date, or will the developer have to wait?
No, they will have to wait till after that point.
Okay.
We won't actually have jurisdiction over this property until the annexation is effective.
Okay.
So I couldn't even accept an application until that time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments to Ben? Is the applicant here? Would they like to say anything?
They are not.
Okay, good. We'll move on. This is a public hearing. Anybody would like to say anything, please come forward, state your name. Seeing any movement, we will close the public hearing. Any further comment from the commission? Seeing any there either? I would entertain a motion to, for recommendation to the council on this property.
I motion we send a favorable recommendation to the Common Council for the proposed annex site with a single-family residential zoning classification.
I'll second.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Passes. Any other business we need to discuss? Not seeing any. Okay, our next meeting, that will conclude our meeting this evening. Actually, screwed that up. Our next meeting is Monday, May the 20th. Entertain a motion to go home.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
See you Monday, May the 20th. Thank you.